This chapter is on the audio mixer. In its lesson, I'm going to talk about the audio mixer controls for panning and volume, as well as how to automate those controls. So go to Working Files and go to Projects and go down to 2001 Mixer Controls. I have this time-lapse video here. I've stretched it way out, so it'll be a little herky-jerky as we play it back, but I wanted it to be long enough to fit the music here. I've got about 5 instances of the wind clip here, which would create some problems if you want to control them on a clip basis, but we're going to control the entire track here, so that'll be fine. I also have 2 instances of the thunder clip, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to control volume here using the track controls inside the mixer. Before we go any further, I want to do some housekeeping. I haven't shown you how to delete tracks, so I'm going to do that now. Pull this down a little bit. Got a couple of extra video tracks here. I'm going to right-click on any header. It's got to be on a header, not out here, but it's got to be on a header. And then it says delete tracks. And I can delete audio and video at the same time, but I want to do it separately just to show you a couple of things here. So I'm going to delete some video tracks by clicking that little guy and delete all the empty tracks, which are those 2 guys there, and they're going to go away. Great. This is the default AVCHD 1080p 30 sequence, so there are also 3 5.1 tracks in here, which we don't need down here, 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to delete one of them by right-clicking on one of them. Let's say this one here. Say delete track. That's how easy it is to delete a single track. And if I right-click again and say delete tracks, then I'm going to delete all the audio tracks that are empty, just like that. Okay, that's done. Now what I want to do is turn on track keyframes, because that's what we're going to work with here, not clip keyframes. I'm going to click on this little guy here, the Show Keyframes button, and you can tell right now it's clip keyframes because there's no little black spot in the middle. And you click this, open it up, and go to track keyframes. A little black spot appears there. We open up this little view here so you can see that as well. Click on that, go to track keyframes. You do need to open up the header to see that extra little option there for the keyframes. I'll go to here and say, show me the track keyframes. Very good. And they're all set to volume here, volume, but we can switch this over to panner at some point when we need to do that. All right, let's go to the audio mixer. Now, the audio mixer by default would be up here in the upper left-hand corner if you've got the standard editing workspace on one of these tabs there, that one there in particular. But if you want to have an audio workspace, that's fine. You can go Window, Workspace, Audio. But from my point of view, the other editing workspace works just fine too. So I'm going to switch back to the editing workspace, Window, Workspace, Editing. There we go. And what I want to do is I want to take the audio mixer out of its frame because I want to expand its height a bit here. So I'm going to slide this over and take it out of the frame by clicking on the grabber handle there and then holding on the control key at some point here, like right now, or the command key, and then letting go of the mouse button. And that puts it in a floating window like that. Drag it down so you can see the whole thing there. Let me give you a little tour here. You've got 1 track for each track down here, audio 1, 2, and 3. You can change the names if you highlight them like that, if you want to do that. The slider controls volume from negative infinity to plus 6 dB, basically the same way that volume is controlled in the effect controls panel. This slider works like a typical slider would be on a piece of hardware. It's very intuitive. Up here are a couple of buttons, mute, solo, and record. If you want to mute a track, you just turn it on, then you won't hear that track. If you want to solo a track, click that. You can solo any number of tracks. Despite the word solo, you can solo any number. So you want to hear just some individual tracks, you can just click solo for those tracks. This little drop-down list here is for the automation mode. Right now we're in read, which means it'll read any keyframes that are in the track. Well, right now there aren't any keyframes, so it's just going to read whatever this controller says. Right now it's all set to 0, meaning the original audio value of those clips. But latch, touch, and write are different ways to automate keyframes, and we're going to work with write only here. Up here is the panner control, left and right. This drop-down list is to show where this track is going. It's going to the master track. There are no other options here at the moment, but you can add what's called a submix. And if you do that, you'll create a new submix track. And then you can choose to either send or output 1 or more individual tracks to that submix track. Then you might want to apply one effect like reverb to 10 tracks, something like that. Rather than applying reverb individually to 10 tracks, you can apply it to one submix and have that apply to all 10 tracks at once. I'm going to talk about submixes in a separate lesson. I'm also going to talk about how you record audio in a separate lesson. You can record a narration or any other kind of audio you can get into your computer. Up here is where you put effects. We'll open that up. It's where you can add effects here. You can put track effects or clip effects. Here they're going to be track effects. I'll close that down. We're going to focus here on controlling volume and panning here. Let's just play this and I'll show you how you can control volume with this left one here, this first track. I'm going to mute the second and third tracks by clicking on these 2 guys. Or I could solo the first one and that would effectively mute the second and third. There you go. You see all those little buttons are kind of depressed now. They're not officially muted, but you can see they're muted by the way the buttons appear there. Now here we go. I can take my mouse off it, put it back on. I'm not adding any keyframes there. I'm not automating any changes. I'm just saying this is where I want this audio to be at this moment. So if I've changed it to here, it's going to be that volume throughout that entire track, which is really probably not what you're going to do most of the time. Most of the time, you're probably going to want to automate some changes over time. And you do that using one of these four things over here. Read does not automate it. That doesn't do anything, but latch, touch, and write do. And I'm going to work with write. Latch and touch are a little bit counterintuitive because they just behave in a sort of unpredictable way unless you read up on them and kind of get how they work. So write to me works more predictably, so I'm going to choose write. There's one little anomaly though inside the mixer panel. That is when you stop writing something, it jumps to what's called touch. So I don't want it to jump to touch. I want it to stay on write, or I'm going to switch it off if I want to switch it off. So what I want to do is turn off that default behavior. You can leave it on, which may work fine for you, but I want to turn it off here. So I'm going to go to this little panel menu up here and uncheck the switch to touch after write, like that. I'm going to bring this guy down to the bottom here. I'm going to put this current time indicator to the beginning. And I'm going to bring up the volume here over a few seconds. Here we go. I'm going to stop. Notice it added all those keyframes, all those track volume keyframes. It's really remarkable. I'm going to press the plus key a couple times here and bring it over so you can see all those keyframes. That's a lot of keyframes. If you tried to put all those keyframes in, you'd be hard pressed to do that. There's this one little thing that happens here on my system. It might not happen on yours, but after I'm done using write, it adds this extra keyframe down here, which looks like silence, but if I play it, it won't sound like silence. So I'm going to select that keyframe using the pen tool. The pen tool is really your go-to tool when you're working with these keyframes here inside the track. So I'm going to slide this guy over and grab the pen tool here. There you go. When I click on this, that'll select that particular keyframe, like that. Now I'm going to press the delete key, and it won't go away instantly. This is just this little anomaly here. But if I change the size of the track, then it goes away. And now if I keep on playing, it might add more keyframes. So I'm going to turn off write now and go to just read. So now let's go back and listen to that. We'll watch this thing automatically go up as it reads these keyframes. Very good. And now when I want to fade it out at the end, I can go to the end like this. Let me just press the backslash key so you can see the end here. I can start here, for example, turn right back on again. I'll just start playing it. And fade it out. Right now, no keyframes show up, but they will once I start moving the current time indicator, another little anomaly here. And there's that little extra guy floating around there. Again, not really clear why that happens, but we're just going to get rid of that by pressing delete key, and then once I make any kind of change, it goes away. And now we'll press read here and listen to how that played out. Now the thing is, you can adjust those keyframes individually or collectively. If you use the pen tool, you can marquee select keyframes by just dragging a marquee around them. And literally you can move them around or delete them or whatever you want to do once you do that. Or you can select them individually just by clicking on one and moving it around as well. A lot of keyframes to manipulate though, so you might want to just do them en masse by deleting them all and starting over again. Well, now we can do the same thing for the other two tracks now. I think you see how that works. I would turn off solo at this point, or I could click solo here and have those two guys soloed together. Let me just show you briefly how that works. I'm going to bring the volume level for the wind down like that. Turn on write like so. And start it off here, and you'll watch the left-hand side of your work, and we can probably try to follow that a little bit. There you go. And there are those keyframes for the wind, and there's that extra little guy that pops up on my system. Click it and say goodbye to that fella. You can also control panning with automation. So I'm going to unsolo these guys so all three work together now. I want to pan the thunder. So I'm going to turn off write here, turn that back to read, switch this over to write for the thunder track, for track number 3, and I'm going to control the panning. I'll start over here to the right because I want the thunder to come in from the right. We'll just play this now and bring the thunder across the page here. Like that. Now we've panned it across the page. And if you want to see all those keyframes, all you got to do is go down to track 3, click that little drop down list and switch over to Panner Balance, and there are all those keyframes. So not only can you use automation in the mixer to control volume, but you can use it to control panning as well.